Identifying.
The king of cakes. Chopper for the win.
G'day guys, welcome back to Cakes by Chopper. Today we have a fairy cake for you. This is a marble fondant winged fairy cake. Now I started with a double layer sponge and I put a third layer on top that I'm going to taper down from the top of the wings to the bottom. You don't have to do this. I just think it looks more effective because the doll sits up on an angle and it's going to look a lot more effective to the person who has the cake because it's raised and they can see more of it. Now I use some parchment paper to draw out half the wing shape from the doll and then fold it in half and using the scissors to cut it out, and that gives you a symmetrical shape for your cake. And then you can start sculpting. Be sure to keep your knife at an upright angle all the way around because you don't want the wings to taper off. A good tip here for when you're carving the cake is to stick it in the freezer just beforehand, like half an hour, and it'll make the cake less crumbly whilst you're carving. Now cutting out a dip in the center for the doll to sit in, I made sure she was wide enough to sit halfway down because you got to allow for the fondant. Once that's done, you can start filling your cake with buttercream. I used a pink buttercream with some jam, or jelly to the Americans, and just blended it through to give it a nice strawberry flavor. Fill it every layer and then give it a dirty ice or a crumb coat. This is so it provides a little layer under the fondant and helps it stick to the cake. Once you've got that covered, and you don't have to be too careful with it, you can just slap it on and just making sure the cake's entirely covered, and then pop it in the fridge to set a little before you apply your fondant. Speaking of the fondant, I pre-colored mine before the video. You can choose any colors you like. I went for purples, blues and pinks, and then I put them out in front of me, and you can see I'm just ripping them into pieces and little logs and shapes, making them into a symmetrical pattern. This is how I got the tiled marble fondant, and it stays loosely in the pattern you put it in, so the design you want will be what you apply here. You'll see when I roll it out, it sort of just spreads. It's good to work on both sides because I was using a wax proof paper, which is not exactly what I wanted, and the fondant stuck to it, so be sure to use grease proof paper or cover your surface in icing sugar or powdered sugar so you don't have any sticking, because you really don't get another chance at this. Also, when you apply this fondant to your cake, I've used that white line down the center to give me a guide where I need to lay it in the middle of the wings so you get the symmetrical pattern. Unfortunately, with the problem I had of it sticking, I was a bit off center, so it just made it sort of skew, but you could see how it was symmetrical. Then you're just going to push the fondant into the cake around all the edges and cut off the excess. And then you're going to grab your doll figurine. I just wrapped some fondant around the body and then used a leaf impression tool to mark out where I wanted some leaves. And then I used a toothpick to mark out finer details and give it a little bit more of a leafy look. To make the wings a little bit more whimsical, I used an edible metallic food paint. This is completely edible, however it goes on sort of like nail polish. It's quick to dry and not really much room for mistakes, so be confident with your lines. You can have a pattern if you like, and it's quite messy if you get it on your hands. These are available from most cake stores, and I just purchased mine from online. Just have a look around, they're quite inexpensive. Then you want to line your cake with some more strawberry buttercream, and there you have your fairy princess cake. Once again, thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. In the meantime, you could check out my Dora the Explorer, Gizmo, or Raphael from the Ninja Turtles. See you next Friday.